Hi, everyone. Welcome to Move More, Worry Less. I'm your host, Paige Festa, the owner and designer of 13 Fit Apparel. Today, I am so excited to be here with my friend, Tim Paulson. He is a CrossFit Games athlete and just competed in the CrossFit Games this year that just ended, 2 weeks ago. He is also the owner of Palace Fitness in Ithaca, New York, and he is the co-owner of Forged by Zeus. So I guess, Tim, if you want to give a little intro on yourself, who you are, what you do, a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So, I was always into fitness. Like, it was always a big part of my life, but I was never I would say I was not always in the fitness industry. I grew up, I played all sorts of sports. I played hockey predominantly, but, I played everything growing up: basketball, baseball, that stuff. I love playing tennis. So I was a super athletic kid, overweight for a little while, but super athletic. And then once I finished playing hockey, I stopped in college. And that was when I found CrossFit. My to-be business partner that I co-own my affiliate with, I met him. He introduced me to CrossFit when we were in school. And that was kind of my first foray into the fitness industry. And I say that because about a year later, we opened the first iteration of our gym. We just rented out a 2-car garage and we opened up this really small, in CrossFit, we call them boxes for anybody that's not familiar with the kind of lingo in CrossFit. So it's an affiliate, it's a small gym. So we opened that when we were in grad school, and I was actually studying to be an accountant. So I got a bachelor's in accounting, and when I was getting my master's in accounting, excuse me, was when we opened the gym. And yeah, so it was kind of just like a little pet project. And we were like, all right, let's see if we can have some fun, maybe start a business while we're in school. Maybe we can get a few members, help pay the rent. That'd be really nice. So, it kind of started as we took it seriously, but it definitely wasn't like any kind of long-term vision. It was very much oh, we'll do it for a year. And yeah, turns out I started to work in an accounting firm. Don't love sitting behind a desk for 80 hours a week. And the opportunity to, kind of affect people's lives through fitness, their physical and their mental health, was really, really enticing. And I knew that accounting would always be there. It's like I still do all the accounting for both my businesses, and so I'm still very active. I feel like I'm pretty sharp on my skills, maybe not to like industry standards, obviously, but still very useful. So I knew it would always be there. So if anything went south at the gym or something like that, at whatever point, I knew I always had accounting. Like I could always go get a job. I could sit at a desk for 40 hours a week, and I could work for the man or whatever I needed to. So yeah, that was basically that's how it started in 2012. And we're basically actually only 2 months away from our 9-year anniversary at the gym.
Wow.
So we've been open for 9 years. And yeah, that's kind of, well, I guess I also compete in CrossFit. So there's that too. But I think that's the gym has always been the biggest part of my kind of identity. And it's kind of what started everything. Competing in CrossFit kind of came as a happy side effect of being around the gym so much. We were used to coach 5, 6, 7 classes a day. We would work out in the middle of the day. And, it was it just kind of became part of the lifestyle of being at the gym all the time. Anyone that's owned a gym, especially in the infancy stages, knows that you're crazy busy. You're there all the time. You're working asinine hours for no money. So getting to work out a decent bit is kind of one of the only perks, because you don't really get paid much. So
Right.
that was kind of how it started. And then, yeah, I fell in love with it, fell in love with the training methodology. And, I've always loved to compete. I've always been an athlete. So, to kind of be able to turn that into a living as well has been pretty special and pretty cool. So I guess that's the long-winded answer of tell me a little bit about how I got here.
Right. That's awesome. I obviously work with you a lot on apparel and everything that you do for your gym. So I know that your kind of tagline, or I don't know, slogan, whatever you want to call it, is your purpose, process, and positivity. I would love for you to talk more about that and how those became kind of the core values of your gym. And I feel like, although it's the core values of your gym, I feel like that's definitely a part of how it's a lot about your mindset too, as an individual. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, so funny enough, it started with actually my coach, who's now one of my best friends. He always had a saying. He's like, positive attitudes, positive results. He's like, that was kind of that was one of the first, like when I was kind of coming of age in CrossFit, and honestly coming of age as a human too. Like I'm currently 31. So like I started competing in CrossFit. We opened the gym in 2012 when I was 22. I started competing in CrossFit the next year when I was 23. So like, I was finishing college, kind of like becoming an adult, really, like, and kind of like really, I was always an old soul, but like I was kind of really going through my formative 20s years. And so I had a good relationship with my coach. And like I said, positive attitudes, positive results was always a really big piece of kind of what he preached. He's like, look, if you come into the gym and you keep a great attitude, you work on your weaknesses, you enjoy the ride, like good things are going to happen. And it always kind of aligned with like, again, like my dad always lived on the good people, lives, he's not dead. He always lives on the good people theory. He's like, look, you do the best that you can, you do what you think is right, and like the universe takes care of you and works out. And like, it was like, it's a very simple philosophy, but like it's something that was ingrained in me from the time I was really little. So I think like those two things kind of met. And then when it kind of came down to it, I was like just kind of having this, as an athlete, trying to figure out what's the best mindset, like how do I become a better athlete, how do I become a better business owner. And I'm a very big reader of Stoic philosophy. I absolutely love it. I've got a bunch of books on it. It's kind of what really grounds me. It's it's my belief system, if I'm being honest. So that was kind of and they're really process oriented. Like there's a lot of talk in Stoic philosophy about like, again, the journey, focusing on the process, things like that. So it kind of like purpose, and then that came about with like process. Like I just became very process oriented by reading so much about these Stoic philosophers. And then positivity really kind of came from my coach Dave. And then purpose, that's just, for me, it's like it became really important, especially as I got older, to really just know why. Like at the end of the day, if you're not deeply rooted in, like, if the core of why you're doing something isn't like really attuned to you, and it's not really true, it's not really a part of who you are, you're probably not going to stick with it in the long run. So it just became really important to me, like, to kind of figure out like what's my purpose, like why am I doing this. And yeah, so basically I thought a lot, and I like thinking. So that was kind of basically how it all came about, like a little bit of influence from some of my mentors, some of my friends, some of my own kind of philosophies, reading things like that. And yeah, I honestly don't really know how it came about one day. Like it just kind of was like, oh yeah, purpose, process, positivity. Like that has a nice ring to it, and it's everything I'm all about. So
Right. I think that's awesome. And I definitely agree on the purpose level. I agree with all of it, but I think living with purpose is really important. And that's a lot of what 13 Fit Apparel stands for. So I'm with you there. And I guess my next question is a little bit loaded, and it could be an easy answer or a hard answer. I don't know. We'll see. But what do you believe that your purpose is? And there could be layers that I don't really know. You can answer that however
Yeah.
feels right.
Yeah. So I guess like start at the most kind of surface level of it is like, like when it comes down to like athlete, professionally, personally, like on a lot of levels, like there's just, I want to be better. Like, like at the end of the day, like that's kind of what it all really comes down to. And like competing as a CrossFit athlete, or owning a gym, like all these things, it's like, I just have this, for me, I just have a real fascination with trying to become a little bit better, like a little bit better than yesterday, a little bit more improved version of myself. I've always been very like, not necessarily a perfectionist, but I really don't like to do anything. I do everything all in. So like, I don't do a lot of things, because when I do something, I'm all in. So like, if I tried to do too many things all in, I would implode. For me, like, like just a lot of the things that I do in life, whether, from X, Y, or Z, sports, relationship, business, anything, like, I just have a tendency to be all in. So I think like for me, again, like the kind of purpose behind like my professional life, and to my personal life as well, to a certain extent, it's just like, just trying to get a little bit better, because that's just kind of the way that I feel driven to live my life. And like, it's just, you know, I'm, I'm curious how good I can get at stuff, and like whether it's I'm curious how strong our community can get in our gym. I'm curious how big our business can get. I want to see that needle moving, and I want to do everything I can to move that needle. I want to see how fit I can get. Like I want to see if my heart actually explodes today. There's some like, I say it kind of jokingly, but like it is a joke, but it's also serious because it's just kind of like that's literally what drives me. Like I wish it was more kind of inventive than that, but like, when it comes to being an athlete in CrossFit, it's like it's a capacity battle. I mean, like, so like a lot of it just comes down to like I want to see if I can go a little harder and a little further than yesterday. And if I can, great, let's try and do it again tomorrow. And if I can't, I hit a limit. Like, like I haven't found a limit yet. And I guess like that's I like to try and push limits, push boundaries, and see what my body is actually capable of, my business is capable of, my, all that stuff. So I think that's like a real big piece of kind of who I am, is just I like to try and move the needle
Right.
in everything that I do. And more recently, I've always been like, and this is like kind of, I guess, overarching like life purpose. I have a great relationship with my parents. So like I grew up, like I have a sister who's 2 years younger than me. And then, it's my parents and I, so two kids. And I've just always had a really great relationship with them. Family has always been super important to me. My relationship with my parents, relationship with my sister. So I think I've always believed in kind of like the core family unit. And like, obviously I met my wife, we were dated for a while, got married, and like, being like a strong, and not in like the typical, like kind of egotistical strong sense, just being a strong family man, like a strong presence for your partner in the house, like, sharing like responsibilities, being along, supportive for the job, like all the things that go into like that. That's always been something that really has kind of driven me, is just like, and being that way in my relationship, and also like in my business, like what I do at the gym, like, it's a community driven business. Like, it's at the end of the day, like people come there, yeah, they come there to be coached, they come there to get fit, but at the end of the day, they come there to be cared about, they come there to meet people that are like-minded, like that's why they come to the gym. And so like, I want to be a leader that people want to gravitate towards, because at the end of the day, it's like I am the leader of the community, and like I want that kind of family vibe to really like to be very present, and to be very like, palpable for people. And that drive has only gotten stronger, obviously, when we decided to have a kid. And we have a 10-month-old son now. And like I mean, has just taken those two things, like wanting to be a strong leader, a strong family figure, and wanting to be better every day, like, and he's just like amplified them like 1,000-fold.
Right.
Like I can't, and like a lot, I've talked to a few of my friends that have young kids as well, like, a couple of my really close buddies, and there's something very indescribable about like having a kid that like just I can't really put into words how it like just pushes, like it puts you on another level of wanting to be the better version of yourself, because it's like, they're watching all the time. Like, and even now, like he's only 10 months old, like, but he picks up on a lot. Like he picks up on a lot of the environment that he's in, and like my mannerisms. And it's like when I'm happy, like he's happier. Like if he can tell that I'm frustrated, like he's a little bit grumpier and kind of it's like little things like that. Like you become so aware of yourself. And like I said, I just feel like when we had our son Wes, he just really amplified those two kind of real big pieces of myself, and kind of my purpose. And he and my wife are definitely my purpose now. They drive pretty much everything that I do. I want to provide for them. I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be a good role model for my son. I want to be a good partner to my wife. Like that's really kind of what I guess drives it all at the end of the day. That's a lot of rambling, but that's
No, I mean, you are very well spoken. So it's not rambling. It all makes sense. And it's really awesome. You have a really, really cool mindset. And so my follow-up question is, you spend all this time in the gym, like training to be better physically, but I guess I know you talked about the reading that you do on philosophy and things like that, but is there anything specific you do to kind of train your mindset, or do anything for your mental health to be able to fulfill your purpose, to be able to continue training in the gym and compete at the level you're competing at?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, one of the biggest things is like, and this is something like I think in the days of technology, everybody struggles with, but like being present and like I think like at the end of the day, a lot of things come back to that. Like it just comes back to being present. And like in order to be fully present, you have to clear your mind. Like if your mind is constantly running 1,000 miles a minute, it's jumbled, you're thinking about a million different things, you're scrolling on social media, you're X, Y, or Z, it just makes it really impossible to be present. And like my wife and I are always on each other about like, put your goddamn phone down. Like, because again, it's like it's such an it's like it's right here. It's always right here.
Right.
It's so easy to just pick it up and kind of mess away time. So like anyway, so kind of coming back to kind of just being present is like, so for me, the two biggest things that I do, I think reflection and then breathing. So like, and I'm a big, huge fan. Like every day I'll spend a couple of minutes, eyes closed, no noise, in like complete silence, and just doing like really deep, slow nasal breathing. And like for me, I don't call it meditation because I'm not doing it with the intent to like, I'm not trying to like, transcendentally meditate or something like that. Like it's literally just for me, it's like, it's time to find complete quiet, like let my thoughts come and go as they want. Like, if something pops up, I'm like, hey, let's think about that for a second. And then I let it go. And it's just like, it's kind of for me, it's an opportunity to essentially just wash the slate clean once a day and be like, all right, like if something's bothering me, let it come up. If something's irritating me, like let it come up. But then also like, give it its time, take a minute, take 2 minutes, think about it. If there's anything you can do to affect it, kind of, I might take some notes or something like that. But, that time for me is very valuable because it helps me. Like, I mean, I do it before my son gets home every day because it's like, when he gets home and like family time commences, it's like I pick my son up, we hang out together, then my wife gets home from work, then we have time together, so it's like I want my brain to be as clear as possible for that time. So like during the day, it's like super busy, super packed. It's go, go, go. It's training. It's working on things for the business. It's, XYZ, you name it, recovery practices, all that stuff. So that kind of breathing is a really big piece of just kind of keeping me present and keeping me grounded. And also, I mean, as I kind of alluded to, it's definitely it's a mental calming exercise because it helps me deal with things that are frustrating me or things that are bugging me or things that I feel like are kind of nagging in the back of my brain for whatever, a project for the business or something that needs to get done. So that's kind of a big piece. And then, I mean, reflection is the other one. And like, obviously they kind of go hand in hand. Like they're definitely linked. But, I think just reflection for me as far as like, thinking about what I could do better. And like when I finish a training session, I reflect, like I think about like, all right, like, did I execute that training session as best as I could? Did I not warm up properly? Did I cool down properly? Did I miss any lifts? Like, could I have pushed harder in the conditioning? So like, just reflecting in general and like, how did I perform today? And the same thing goes for, for the business, like, for both my businesses, like there's definitely a checklist of daily things that I want to get done. There's a checklist of projects I have to do, but on a less, I would say on a less frequent basis, I'll do the same thing for my business. Like, whether it's every couple of weeks or once every month or two, like I'll just kind of sit down and be like, can I be better? Like, how am I as a leader right now? How am I, are the projects that I've had on my list, are they getting done? Am I, like kind of what's the feedback I'm getting from the coaches? Like, all these things kind of like, how's the growth of the business? Like I'll sit down and kind of have those reflection sessions. But at the end of the day, again, I'm very process oriented. So I believe that if I'm doing the right things every day or the things that I quote unquote should be that I've laid out for myself, then those big picture goals should take care of themselves. I don't spend a lot of time stressing about them because again, at the end of the day, if you're doing the right things day in and day out, then the big picture takes care of itself. You don't need to be thinking about it very often. You don't need to be like, I don't need to be looking at our revenue numbers every week if we're focusing on taking care of our community, if we're focusing on training our coaches, if we're focusing on building connections, like if we're doing all of these things, the big picture will take care of itself.
I think that is such a good way to live and to think about things. And I need to take your advice because I can definitely stress about little things. And it's like, but you're right. It's if you're doing all the right things and you're working hard, then big picture, like in theory, it should all work out, right?
Yeah. And that's like, I mean, that's a big piece. Like I started reading Stoic philosophy when I was, I mean, probably 18, something around there. Like I took an intro to philosophy class actually my freshman year of college and like fell in love. And I spent basically all of my electives on, funny enough, history, philosophy, and architecture. Weird, I know. All my electives in college were basically concentrated in those areas. And like, so I got introduced to philosophy in college, and like it was an ancient Greek philosophy. Like it was a like a class, I forget what it's called, like classics or something like that. So it was a lot of like Epictetus, Epicurus, Seneca, like a lot of these, ancient Greek philosophers Aristotle that we talked about. And like, I just became fascinated with them. And like, the Stoic mindset, like it's taken a long time for me to try and develop, but like, just kind of, like releasing the outcome is a really big piece of it. It's like being process oriented and releasing the outcome and releasing the things that you can't control. And sometimes I think my wife would argue that I do that too well. I can't control it. I have a tendency to not give a single shit about it. And like,
Right.
sometimes I should probably I should care a little bit more about
Just
the
a little
things.
bit.
But, it's like, it's a fine line. And like, it's something that I've worked really hard in a lot of aspects of my life to kind of control. But yeah, so it definitely pays off, and it's very, very helpful and very useful sometimes. But sometimes I need to learn when to employ it less.
Fair enough. I definitely want to talk a little bit about the CrossFit Games. I'm sure that you're still riding a little bit of a high from it, since it's only been like, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks since they
Yeah.
ended. It was so exciting to watch you there. So I guess, well, we talked a little bit in the beginning. You got into fitness not on accident, but like you weren't planning on being like an elite CrossFit athlete. But how did it, I mean, you've been in the games more than one time. So how do you go from like, oh, we're going to start a garage business to like being in the CrossFit Games? Like, how on earth did that happen?
Yeah. So very slowly, I guess. It's like, I think it's one of those things, like a lot of people, you see people come into the CrossFit space, like the CrossFit Games rather. And it's like, well, they got there overnight. Like they only started CrossFit a year ago. And it's like, well, yeah, but a lot of them, myself included, like we've been training since we were young. It's like I started working with personal trainers for hockey, like doing dry land, off ice stuff, weight room things. I mean, I was probably 11, like 11, maybe 12. Like I was young, so it's like I've been training with the intent to get fitter since I was like 11 or 12 years old. So like when I found CrossFit, I was like, oh, so like all we do is train to get fitter. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice actually. Like, you're
Right.
not necessarily training to improve another sport. It's like you're training to improve the training. And I
Right.
think that was like, it was a very like, when we started the gym and when I fell in love with CrossFit, like it's so linear. It's like there's all these movements you can do, but it's like you're just training to get better at training. Like you're training to become fitter. You're training to reduce your 2K, to try and lift more weight. And it's like, oh, that'll make sense because, again, going back to like Stoic philosophy a little bit, like it's all very controllable. So it's like, it's one of those really nice things. It's like, if you're doing the right things day in and day out, you should see progress, period. And it's like, that was very just like, it fits my like kind of OCD type A personality very well. It's like, oh, so you mean if I work hard, I get better and I don't have to worry about anything outside of my control? That's amazing. So that was kind of like started me like really into like what made me love CrossFit. And like at the same token, when I found out that there was something called regionals, or like that I did my first open in 2012, and it's like, oh, this is fun. Like you get to like train super hard, and then you get to benchmark against other people. Like it's literally just it's a suffer fest. Like whoever suffers the most wins. That sounds fantastic. Um, so yeah, I kind of like did my first open and was like, wow, that was really cool. I got destroyed. I came in like, I don't know, 10,000th place in my region, like did very, very mediocrely. But, just kind of once I found out that there was a competitive outlet, it just kind of gave me that little extra drive in the gym to be like, right, so like now I'm not only training to get better, like I'm training and there's an avenue to show how you can get better. Like, you can compete in front of people and they watch you, and like, seems weird, but like, conceptually it seemed weird anyway. They're just going to watch me work out. But
Right.
I kind of fell in love with it. And like the fact that there was an end game was really cool. So, my dreams kind of started small. Like I did my first open, got destroyed. And then, I was like, all right, like I want to train so that I can do better in the open. Like, so 2012, like I said, came like 10,000th of my region. And I was like, all right, the open comes again in 2013, and let's just try and get much better at the open. Like, let's, I'll do all the classic movements in CrossFit. Like we'll do toes to bar, we'll do light barbell cycling. We'll try and get a little stronger. work on gymnastics movements like muscle ups. And I was like, all right, great. So I just did that for a full year. And then in 2013, I did the Open again. And I was the very, very last person to get a backfill invite to regionals. So like, they invited 48. I finished like 57th maybe. And like 10 guys declined. So I was like the last guy that they invited. And I was like, oh, well, that's super sweet. Like I wasn't really planning on being here. Like I was just trying to get better at the Open, but awesome. Like, of course I'm going. So I went to my first regional, didn't go great. I DNF'd. We can talk the story if you want, but basically I had too big of an ego for my fitness level, and I DNF'd. So I DNF'd the weekend. Funny little side story. It actually worked out well. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, Caitlin, she was graduating with her doctorate that weekend. So I was going to miss it to compete in regionals. But the fact that I DNF'd, she graduated on Saturday. I DNF'd on Friday. So I just went to sleep for like 3 hours and then drove from Boston down to New Jersey on like Saturday morning at like 2 a.m. and I made her graduation. So that was super cool. So things worked out. The universe works in mysterious ways.
Right.
Anyway, so I DNF'd out of the regional. And then, basically from there, it was like, all right, I want to go back to regionals every year and I want to get better. And so I did that in 2014. I've been 2015. So I competed at regionals 13, 14. I think 2015, I competed at regionals and I had a pretty good year. I want to say I was like low teens. I was like somewhere between 10 and 15, I think, maybe top 10. So like I did well enough that I was like, oh, like I might actually, like if I keep doing this, like one day I might actually qualify for the CrossFit Games, and that would be like really cool. So I think 2015 was the year where it all became real, and it was like, okay, like I think I can actually qualify for the highest levels of this sport. And that was actually 2015 was the year I started working with my current coach, Dave Charbonneau. So I met him through this thing called Grid, another very long side story. So we met and I started training with him, and I like loved the programming. Again, I loved his mindset. He became a pretty close friend pretty quickly. And I was just like really excited. I was having a great time training. I loved it. The gym was doing well. Business was doing well. So that was basically kind of when I really got into competitive. I would say that was when I started competing with the intent to compete. It's like, it wasn't like I was just trying to get back to regionals. It was like, okay, I had a good year at regionals. I'm working with a new coach. I'm training a little more than I ever have. That was when I started training for more than like 90 minutes a day. And I was like, all right, like let's build this. And then in 2016, I went to regionals again, did a little worse because like that year some very big weaknesses were exposed, and then basically we went back to the drawing board and hammered the holy hell out of them all through up to 2017. And then 2017 was the first year I qualified for the games, and I've been back every year since. So that's kind of how it all started. There's lots more nuances to that story, but I mean, basically that's the maybe not 10,000, that's the 5,000 foot view.
Yeah. So last year in the games, wait, no, was it last year's confusing because of COVID? So perhaps it was
last year was the COVID games, and then
right.
2019 was the everybody goes to the games.
Right, where they had a field of like 150 people, or they
exactly.
They did something crazy. I can't remember exactly what happened, but
Yep. Yeah. The 2019, I qualified 2017, 2018. Those years were quote unquote normal. Like it was the same system as it had always been. 2019, the owner of CrossFit kind of scratched the whole system, and a lot more people qualified for the games than probably should have for an elite level sport. And then they basically did massive sweeping cuts. The very first event, they cut like half the field. Next event, they cut the field in half again. So, and I frankly just underperformed tremendously in the first event and got cut, which was there's a lot to that story, but again, just underperformed, and a lot of growth came from it. It was probably one of the most disappointing moments of my athletic career, certainly, and of my life also probably. So it's just like, but a lot of really, really good things came from it as far as like personal growth, mindset, my approach to training, things like that. So, I've always been a firm believer that, some of the best things in your life come from your biggest failures. And that was definitely an example of it for me. And then 2020 COVID happened. So the games were in our gym. So we actually, I competed at my affiliate at the gym that I, own, and did well, had a good year. And then Yeah, this year 2021 was the first non-COVID games that we had. Well, it's still COVID-y, but not like not full COVID. We were allowed to do stuff. It wasn't like full COVID where you can't do anything, sit in your house by yourself. So
Right.
slight step in the right direction.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, how many people did they start with on the field this year? Was it 50?
So this year was back to 40. So
It
20,
was started at 4. Oh, because they did a cut from 40 to 30
30.
to
Yep,
20.
30 to 20, exactly. So yeah, this year, so normally they have 40 people on the field. So you basically, anybody on the earth can compete to try and go to the games. It's a very linear process. You do the Open, which is a mass participatory event. Then you go to quarterfinals, which is for the top 10%. So the top 10% of male and female athletes from the Open go to the quarterfinals. From there, your top athletes, depending on what region you're in, it varies a little. Things are based on continents. So for North America, for instance, the top 160, 120, the top 120 men advance to the semifinals. So from the Open to quarterfinals to semifinals. So then you go to your semifinal. You compete in fields of 30. So there's 4 semifinals that each have 30 men. And from there, your top 5 advance to the CrossFit Games. And then, like I said, every continent's numbers are a little different, but basically that process advances 40 people to the games, 40 men, 40 women, 40 teams. And then this year there were some cuts that were, I would definitely say much more in line with the kind of spirit of competition. So this year that started with 40 athletes, they did 9 events. So we competed over 2 long days of competition. You did 9 events. They cut the field to 30. So they cut 10 people. And then you did one more event. So 10 total, and you cut the field to 20. And then the top 20 finished 5 more events. So
Right.
there was 15 events total. Like I said, after 9 events, cut to 30 men. After 10 events, cut to 20 men. And then the last guys kind of finish out the weekend.
Right. So I remember seeing on social media, and they talked about it when I was watching the CrossFit Games, that you were sick on like the first day or the second day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. How do you like, first of all, the fact that you can say that you are like started out as one of the top 40 fittest people in the world, like that's crazy. And then you get sick the first day, and then you're still like, you get through it, which I can't even imagine, because I don't think I could push through anything like that to stay. But it was really nail bitey, I guess you could say, when they were cutting the field from 40 to 30, and you were sitting in like
31st. It was not
31st, and me and my boyfriend were like, oh my God, come on, Tim, come on, Tim.
yeah.
Oh, I'm shaking. I shook the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you ended up in 28th place. So my question is, I guess, like, emotionally, mentally, how did you approach like the next events, knowing, like this is a make or break moment?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, and it's funny. So, I mean, going back to like, it's pretty cool sometimes. Like, again, I don't often think about the big picture, and it's like, it's kind of crazy sometimes. Be like, I'm one of the 40 fittest people on the face of this planet, like, and
On the earth. That's insane.
yeah, I mean, and it's, and like to be at that level for the last 5 years, it's like, I don't think, again, I don't ever think about that, because it's not like, I say like, occasionally the thought will pop into my head. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, like that's, it's a lot of hard work, obviously, like you're, day in and day out, but it's like, that's what I'm always focused on. It's just like, the day in, the day out, am I doing what I need to be doing to get better, to stay at this level, to try and, perform better than last year. But I mean, yeah, like this year, it's, I don't, I hate to sound like kind of beating a dead horse here. I don't know if that saying is appropriate in 2021 anymore. But it's like, it's, when it came down to it, like I woke up. So Wednesday morning, I woke up and I was like super nauseous, and I just couldn't. So the game started on Wednesday. It was the first day of competition. And, like I very normally have competition nerves. Like I have trouble eating breakfast. Like, I might get a little sick, or like my stomach's upset, it's just like, it's very normal. It's like, it's any athlete will tell you that, like, that's very normal. Like just being like butterflies and just being like, oh God, like it's finally time to compete. Holy crap. Like, as much as you're mentally prepared, like the time when it comes to put all your hard work on display is always nerve wracking, always. So like that's kind of what I thought it was. I was like, all right, whatever. Like I forced down breakfast, like literally like burping in between bites. Like it was the most unpleasant breakfast I've ever eaten in my life. But I was like, you know what? You need to eat. Like if you don't eat, you're not going to perform. You're going to regret it later. So like, do what you have to do. Shovel this food in your mouth and drink your coffee. And I was like, all right. So I did it, and just kind of like, just kind of hoped I would start to feel better. We had an early start. The first event, we had to be on site at like 7, I think, that day. And the first event was at like 9 o'clock. So we get on site, and, like as things kind of start to flow a little bit, I'm like, all right, maybe I'm feeling a little better. Like I was a little less nauseous. We got to the site for the first event, which was it was a swim and a kayak that was like basically like an hour and a half long, or just over an hour long. So I was like, all right, and like as we got closer to the event, I was like, oh, like I'm actually feeling a little better. Like like maybe it was just nerves, life, and I'm good to go. So like, and so I was just I was in a good headspace. I was like, all right, it was just competition nerves. Like it's gonna be a great day. So I started to swim, and like halfway through the swim, I threw up in the lake a little bit, but like it was probably because I was like obviously drinking a little bit of lake water, because the swim was like 25-30 minutes. So I kind of wrote it off. I still felt fine. Finished the swim, jumped in the kayaked across the lake, was like super excited. It was like a 45-minute kayak. Like I performed well, everything felt good. And I finished that event, and I was like, all right, like that went about as well as I thought it would. Like I finished 29th. Like swimming is not a strong suit of mine. We work really hard on it, but I'm not the greatest swimmer. And I was really proud of how I did. Like I did great on the swim. I felt like I held my own. And then I got out of the water, and I was like, it was a long event. It was over an hour. So I'd obviously created a serious caloric deficit. So I knew I needed to eat. And like right the second I took a bite, I felt nauseous as hell again. And I was like, all right, well, that sucks, because I was feeling better. So now what the hell? So like, I was trying to stomach food and just got sicker and sicker. Like every bite I took, like I just wanted to puke more. So like at a certain point, like I was trying to refuel, because again, like I knew in my head, I was like, you need to eat. Like this, like especially after a long endurance event in the morning, like you need a metric ton of calories in order to survive this day and perform physically. So I just like kept trying to force feed myself food, and I was like, you have to like put more food in your mouth, you have to eat. And frankly, I just kept feeling shittier and shittier and shittier. Like kept nauseous. I threw up a couple more times. So like at the end of the day, I got to a point, I think the next event, what was our next event? Oh, the next event we had to flip a pig, which is basically like it's a rectangular tire. It weighs like 500 some odd pounds. And then we had to do a sled pull, a bunch of muscle ups, and then do it again. And like by the time I went to start that event, like I was just so nauseous. Because I was trying to eat, I couldn't stomach anything. So that was basically, and that was essentially kept happening all day. I did the event, felt like I had no gas because I was barely able to eat anything. I was, burping, throwing up my mouth during the events. Like we had a 500-meter sprint after that. Like same thing. I puked in my mouth halfway through. My legs locked up. I just had no gas, and it was like, so it was super frustrating. Like, but at the end of the day, it was like, again, I just like resorted to like, all right, you have two options. You can get super pissed off because your body's not cooperating, or you can control the few things that you feel like you can control right now, and you can just perform as best as you can, and like at the end of the day, that was the choice I made. It was like, I'm not going to quit. Like, obviously that never even crossed my mind, but it was like, all right, well, you're just going to compete and you're going to do your best you can. And if you puke, you puke. Like if you puke on the floor, whatever, like shit happens, like it sucks, but that's what it is. And that was really the story of the day. I think finally by like Wednesday afternoon, we had done 3 events. I basically just decided, I was like, stop eating. Like, it's obviously not working for you. And I basically just decided, I was like, I would rather compete on no energy stores and just kind of mental fortitude than be burping and puking and just like be feeling really awful. So I was like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to stop eating and I'm just going to go compete. So I did the last event of the day. I hadn't eaten anything since basically like 11 o'clock in the morning. The event was at like 7 at night. And I was like, all right, like just do as best as you can. And like, it felt better, like I wasn't quite myself. I didn't have the energy stores I wish. I didn't have the giddy up that I was looking for, but I was in a good headspace and like I pushed as hard as I could given the circumstances. So so that was basically the end of day one. I got back to my hotel room. I tried to eat again, still felt really sick. Was able, like, again, basically just stayed awake and force fed myself again, like kind of just again burping, nauseous, all that stuff. And luckily by Thursday morning, whatever I had mostly passed, so I was able to eat normally all day Thursday. And yeah, basically spent the rest of the weekend trying to dig myself out of a nice big hole, because honestly, I came almost dead last in the second and third event on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Which isn't surprising given that I wasn't, obviously feeling great, and like the field's just so fit. Like at that level, every little 1% matters, and
Right.
I wasn't 100% myself, so it doesn't surprise me at all that I got shit kicked and came in almost last.
Right. But even so, you still made it past the first cut. So what was, I mean, I guess your mindset is just that you're going to work as hard as you can to beat it. But I guess what was your experience and your thought process, like being in 31st place and being like this, like I have to be in at least 30th. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, it comes like when you go to the CrossFit Games, like, so that was like Thursday was a rest day. Friday, we had 5 events. So like I woke up Friday morning, I was feeling better. I had eaten normally all day Thursday. I had breakfast on Friday and didn't feel sick. I was like, all right, this is great. So I was in a great headspace. I was like, hey, like 500 points, man. Like there was only 400 points up for grabs on Wednesday. So like there's so much competition left. And I was like, all right, like, let's go. Like, I was fired up. I was excited because, like you'll hear, like, I mean, a lot of athletes all the time, it's like, you kind of have to have selective memory, and like it's especially true at the CrossFit Games where you're doing 15 events. It's like you have some really good events, you have some really bad events, you have good days, you have bad days, and like, you have good, you might have a good minute of a workout even, it's like, so having that like selective amnesia is super important, and like I have developed it pretty well. And like, so I woke up Friday morning and I was like, all right, Wednesday never happened. Like there, at the end of the day, you can't control it, it's in the past. All you can do is try and take advantage of the 500 points that are up for grabs today, and you do that one event at a time. So started with the first event on Friday morning and basically just tried to execute and steal as many points as I can in every event. Like, and at the end of the day, my approach to competing, it hasn't always been, but it is now. It's like I'm just trying to maximize my performance. Like I'm trying to stay in my lane. I'm trying to give, based on my body, based on how I'm feeling at the time, based on all these factors, like I'm just trying to maximize my performance in the minute. And if I do that, I have to be happy with the end result, because at the end of the day, again, that's all I can control. I can only control how I perform in each minute and how I push my body, how I game plan, how I recover, all these things. So I did that as best as I could all day Friday, just one event at a time. And frankly, if I'm being honest, I was pretty happy with most of my executions. Guys are just really good. Like at the end of the day, like the CrossFit Games, they're really hard, it turns out.
Who would have thought?
I know, exactly, weird. But like guys are really fit, and it's like it's really hard. I had a rough day Wednesday, so I was in one of the bottom heats. So like, I was in the quote unquote slower heat for the most part. So it's like, and it's a common theme at the games. Like if you're in that slower heat, like it's you can't blame the heat for your performance like that, and that's not what I would ever try and do. But like the heat is slower, so like you have to go the extra mile in your own mind in order to like get out in front of your heat and know that the heat that's coming after you is going to be on average faster. So like not only do you need to win your heat, you need to win your heat by a mile. So like, like in that little bit of stress can be kind of hard to deal with, because like you can't really rely on, okay, like am I beating the guys around me? Like you can't get in the middle of a workout and like kind of take a quick like side glance and be like, okay, do I need to push a little harder? Like, can I, like you don't have that opportunity. Whereas you do when you're in those like final heats, because those are the guys that are performing better on the weekend, because the heats are done by your ranking after each event. So So yeah, I mean, that was kind of how it went Friday. Like, honestly, it was just, I was happy with my performances. I was happy with my execution, but it was just, again, digging out of that hole was just really hard. Like I had
Yeah.
given up a lot of points on Wednesday, and making them up was just, it was just not really possible.
Yeah.
So it was, again, I was honestly on the whole happy with it. Like I think my placing in events on Friday is reflective of my fitness.
Yeah.
It was reflective of the day, of the event, of the effort that I gave. So I'm not mad about it. Do I wish I had a little more in the gas in the tank, especially on Wednesday? I mean, yeah, but like, that's sport. Sometimes
Right.
you show up and you're not yourself, and you just have to do your best anyway, because that's the way sports works.
But still, all said and done, you are the 28th fittest man in the world.
Yeah,
That's that's really like the world is pretty big, you know what I mean? That's crazy.
yeah. I mean, and like you said, I mean, I especially this year with like having us, like, having our son, and like just kind of having what I feel is a much better perspective on the big picture of life, and just like, like, I hope that my legacy as a person and as a father and as an athlete is much bigger than whatever place I finish at the games. Like, I hope to affect people in a better way, both at my gym, through social media channels, through interactions, through all these things. Like, I hope that my legacy is much more than being the 28th fittest man on earth. It's like, yeah, like, it's a cool accolade. And like, of course I want to do better. Like, I want to be the 10th fittest man on earth. I want to be the fifth fit, like I want to improve my placing, and I want to do better. But at the end of the day, I think this year more than any other year, I have a good perspective that, it's like, it's just a number. And like, numbers fade, numbers change, they change every day. But like, the impact that you get to have, and like, how you build yourself on your daily kind of, your daily grind, your daily journey, has a lot more to do with, the legacy that you leave, what kind of person you are, and kind of the impact that you can have on, the people around you. And that's something, um, that I focus a lot more on that now than I used to.
Yeah. That's really such an incredible way to look at it too, because I think that it's really easy to get stuck on numbers or placement or, whatever. And I mean, I've known you for a little while now, and following you is so inspiring, like not just because, like you made it to the CrossFit Games or whatever, but I think the way that you approach everything is just something that is worthy of striving for, just like enjoying the process, wanting to be better, wanting to impact people, and being so authentically positive and caring. Like, it's very clear that you're not just like saying this to look good. You know what I like?
I
It's a
appreciate
very real thing, and I really appreciate that about you, because I think that especially when you are in the spotlight of a sport, I think I wouldn't know because I'm nowhere near any of that, but I would assume it would be really easy to get wrapped up in like what's cool and like being number one and like all these other things that are very surface level. But I think that your focus is just so much deeper than that, and it's so real, and it's a really you're very inspiring in that way.
Well, thank you. I mean, like, it's definitely, I mean, again, it's taken a long time for me to kind of have that perspective, like, and especially like, it's only getting easier to compare ourselves, like, through social media, through constant interactions with the news or X, Y, like, whatever it is. Like, it's so easy to comparison shop nowadays. And like, even in our sport, like, CrossFit, like, you do the open every year, like, that's an event. Like, you're always like, the reason that you train is to try and do a workout faster. So it's like, even like on a very intrinsic level, it's like, all right, well, did I do this workout faster than I did last time? Yes or no? Like, it's so easy to get caught up in those comparisons. And like, you know like, yeah, like, sometimes comparison is the theft of joy, very, common quote that's also very true. But it's like, I feel like I've developed an ability to use comparison, I guess, effectively. Like, again, whether comparison to my former self, like my old numbers, my training numbers, my X, Y, or Z, um, and also just avoiding comparison, like, at times, because again, it's just kind of, I think more often than not, it does us a lot more harm than good. So, like, and that's, again, on like my, like, social media, through my interactions with our members at the gym every day, it's like, I just want to kind of try and share that, it's like that, just that that's not what it's about. Like, like we're not here to compare ourselves. We're just here to try and be a little bit better than we were yesterday, whether that's physically, whether that's mentally, whether that's as a father, as an athlete, as a, X, Y, or Z. Like, that's all we can really do in life, is like try and get a little better than we were yesterday. And if you're doing that, then in my opinion, you're doing a lot of things right. Like,
Yeah.
for me as an athlete, especially, like, yeah, it's really easy to get wrapped up in like, well, I placed worse than last year. Doesn't that mean I'm a worse person this year? It doesn't mean I'm a worse athlete this year. It's like, just, it's a different competition. It's against
Right.
different guys. It's with different events. It's different workouts. Like, it's just, that's sport. Like sometimes you have a weekend where the stars align and you perform at your absolute maximum capacity. And those weekends are awesome. Like, like they happen rarely, but when they happen, it's like, man, that was awesome. But more often than not, it's about adversity. Like, more often than not, when I've competed probably 30 times in person over the years. And I will
Right.
tell you that probably 26 to 27 of them, probably 28 of them were not perfect. Like,
Right.
it sucked, or I wasn't feeling, like X, Y, or Z, like something went wrong. So it's like, competing is about learning how to deal with adversity. And I mean, honestly, so is life. Like,
Right.
that's learning how to deal with adversity is basically part of being a human. So
Yeah,
you
for
can figure
sure.
that out, the better.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're human like the rest of us. So I'm guessing there's days that you're like not totally feeling it. You don't want to train, or, you're not feeling well, or whatever the case is. But I guess at your level, like you kind of can't just be like, nah, I don't feel like it today. Like if you want to get better, you have to train. So I guess, how do you get through that? How do you power through that? What's your mindset? How do you approach training days that you're just like, nah?
Yeah. I mean, so I will say, like, and they're a lot less common than they used to be. And part of that is because nowadays I'm better able to optimize my life to perform in training, whereas that was not always the case. Like I used to be coaching 25 classes or more a week at the gym, and I was trying to get in, 20 hours of training a week. I was still doing 10 to 15 hours of work for, the back end stuff for Zeus, my programming company, or for the gym doing accounting. So like, like there were weeks where, you're trying to get 60, 70, 80 hours of work into a week, and it was much, much harder to perform optimally because there was a million other things that I was focusing on and doing. Whereas now the gym is in a much more mature place. I only coach a couple classes a week. We have an amazing support team of coaches, that have taken on other responsibilities, things like that. So like I said, part of it is like I've optimized my life better. My routine, my schedules, the duties that I perform for different businesses, adventures, things like that. So I think being realistic about how you should feel is an important piece of it, because again, it's like, I expect myself to feel better more often now because I have done a lot of things and a lot of hard work to try and make that the case. Whereas, like, again, I used to like be like, yeah, well, you're like, yeah, you just coach for 4 hours. So if you feel a little bad training, it's not really that surprising. Like, and that was like an okay mindset for me back then, whereas that doesn't happen as much now. But anyway, so like kind of big picture that, but small picture, like, yeah, there are definitely days where it's harder, but I think the most important thing is that, like, for me, when I look at a day, it's like, did you do everything you could given the circumstances to move the needle? Like, and the answer to that question is very simple: yes or no. It's like, it isn't, did I perform my best today? Like that question doesn't really ever answer my mind. It's like, no, did you do what you should to the best of your ability given the circumstances? And if the answer is yes, you got better. Like, and I think, like, at the end of the day, like, I like to keep things simple and black and white like that, because again, it's like, sometimes you just have to take the result out of it. Like, like, it's not every day is going to be optimum performance. Like, sorry guys, that's just the way life works. It's like, you can't PR every day. You can't PR at life every day. You can't be the absolute best dad every day. Like, it's just, you can't be the best every single day. So what you can do is show up, like, and that's something that I always try and focus on, is like, you can show up every day. You can give it your best every day. Like, that's something that you can do. And that's something that only I can control. Like, so yeah, did I show up to the gym? Like, did I execute every piece of my training? Like, did I warm up properly? Did I cool down properly? Did I do all my accessory work? Did I give the Metcon every single piece of me that I could? If the answer to all these questions is yes, then, I had a good day and I got better. And I think like at the end of the day, that I guess is motivating for me because, like I'm definitely a list person. I like lists. I like to make them. I like to check things off. It feels really nice. So for me, like I look at training like a list, and it's like, again, I showed like I see my list for the day and it's like, all right, I don't feel great. And like, that's okay. I can still do the work. Like I might have to modify something. If I have an injury, if something's bothering me, I might have to change a movement here or there. I might have to change the loading or, it's like, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I need to do in order to get the work done, in order to move the needle, in order to check the box, in order to make sure that I did those little things that I could, to try and get the most out of my day. And then kind of like going back full circle at the end of the day, I reflect like what can I do to change that? Like if I felt like crap today, could I have done something differently? Like, did I not sleep well last night? Did I have a drink before bed? Did I, not stretch enough? Like there's always a checklist of things that I can go through, and like, sometimes I could better optimize those things. And like, that's something that you can change. Obviously I try not to make those simple mistakes. Like, did I drink enough water yesterday? Did I track all my food? Did I eat enough? Did I eat the right things at the right times? Like I have it all down to pretty much a science right now. So I will say that more often than not, those things aren't the problem. But, sometimes there's things in life, like, did my son Wes, did he have a shit day? Like, was he just like a bear in the afternoon? Like was he just really hard and really exhausting today? Because that can affect training the next day. It's like, and that's a reality of life now. Like, it's just, yeah, like, my son he's awesome. Like, he's a little legend. He's so happy. He's the smiliest little kid. Like, he's the best. But he's a kid, like he's still going to have days where he's just really fussy, or he has a meltdown, or, where like he's just being extra needy and he wants to break my back. Like, like there are just days where it happens. And, so when I finish a training day, I think it's important to reflect back and be like, all right, was there a circumstance that caused me to feel this way, that caused me to perform suboptimally today? And sometimes it's just good to have an answer. Like I couldn't change, again, I'm just using this as an example, but like, yeah, I couldn't change my son's mood yesterday. And like, if it affected my training today, so be it. That's part of being a dad. I told my wife from the start, like, I'm, as being like, I want to keep qualifying for the CrossFit Games and I want to keep competing at the highest level, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of our family. I'm not going to do it at the expense of time with my son, of time with her. Like, I'm not going to, I have a very hard line that I'm not willing to sacrifice those things. And if that means that at some point my career comes to an end, I'm okay with that. Like, if I don't make it back to the games because I poured more energy into being a dad, being a husband, like, I'm okay with that. Like that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, because sports don't last and they will. So, like, that's an okay, it's an okay thing for me to have. But anyway, long story, long answer, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all goes back to what you were saying earlier, just like controlling what you can control. And I think it's important, and it's something that I personally need to work on, is just like being understanding of yourself and your circumstance for the day. And I just think that's a really great takeaway from this whole conversation, is just that you do the best with what you have and what's happening in that time. And if you do the best that you can, you're good. And I think and going back to the comparison thing, it's really easy to like judge ourselves or feel like we didn't do enough because you see other people, posting all like the great things that they did on Instagram. So it makes you feel, it's just like all these things kind of come together. And it's like, if you can just control what you can control, be understanding of yourself and your circumstance, and do the best that you can, and like let the other stuff go. I mean, easier said than done, 100%. It's stuff that I for sure need to work on, but I think that's just like that's a really great takeaway.
I mean, and that's like, and at the end of the day, like, that's, again, I love Stoic philosophy, because like, it's, some people think it's very selfish, but I think it's not selfish. It's important to understand it's important to understand what pieces of you control, and it's like, it's not, yeah. So anyway, like, I don't think, some people find Stoic philosophy to be self-centered. I'm like, I don't think it's self-centered, but like, at the end of the day, like, yes, you can only control yourself. So like, to a certain extent, you don't have to be self-centered, but you have to understand your limits. And I think like being gracious with ourselves and understanding the limits of what we can control is a really important component of happiness. And it's like, it's something we not harp on, but like, it's something we definitely instill in our coaches at the gym as well, as like, part of our job is to meet our members where they are every day, and it's like, they might have had a horrible day at work, or they might have had a bad night's sleep, or, they might have had an XYZ. They might be feeling like crap today for any one of a million reasons. And your goal as the coach is to help them meet themselves where they are, whether that's helping them modify movement, scale loading, helping them understand that, like, hey, today might not be your best intensity day for the workout. And it's okay. It's all good. Like give yourself some grace to, like, just show up and just give it your best. Like, like that's some days that's okay. Like, every day it's okay. Actually, showing up and doing your best is literally what it's all about. But
Right.
it's okay that, you can show up, do your best, perform like shit, and that's okay.
Right.
It's like we have to learn how to be okay with that, because again, sometimes that's just, that's life. But at the end in the big picture, in the long run, I think all those, showing up on the days where you don't feel your best, it adds up. Like, those days will even out with the days where you feel great. You'll meet in the middle here, and hopefully that trajectory's got a nice little slant to it and you're headed in the right direction.
Right.
That's what we plan for anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to ask you two wrap up questions that are kind of the same, but a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I'll ask them at once and I'll let you just kind of lump them together if you'd like. So, talking to like the normal average person who's not an elite CrossFitter, somebody who may have never tried CrossFit before, but wants to. I know that sometimes people get really intimidated by the sport or by doing it because it can be really intense. So, if you have any advice for those people who just want to get started or are curious about it, but then also if you have any kind of advice for athletes looking to compete at the level that you are competing at.
Yes, honestly, I think for people that are kind of hesitant to start, I think the most important part is to do some research. So, like, if there are multiple CrossFit gyms in your area, go to their websites and reach out to them, and, ask to get a face-to-face meeting. Be like, hey, can I meet with a coach? Can I meet with the owner for 10 minutes and just talk to them? Because I think in my opinion, there are a couple things that any good gym should do. They should make you feel comfortable from the minute you walk in the door. You want to get a vibe for the community, for the facility. Like, do they take good care of the space? Does the class look high energy? Do people look like they're having fun? Like, you need to get a feel for those things. I think, like, and that's one of the biggest things is, like, CrossFit gyms or any community focused gym, they're only as successful as the vibe that they have. It's like, and that's really important, is to go to a space where you feel welcome, where you feel like the community is supportive, you get a good feel, a good vibe from the coaches. And frankly, they're able to answer your questions. And, like, those questions can be like, hey, I don't feel safe. This shit scares me. Why shouldn't I be scared? Like, in my opinion, like, a good gym owner or a good coach should be able to answer that question for you. Like, they should be able to explain how experienced their coaches are, how well trained they are, how they're really comfortable scaling movements to meet you where you are that day. Like, any good gym should be able to convince you that that is what their team is trained to do. So I think for me, like, the two pillars of our gym have always been coaching and community. Like, those are the two things we focus on the most. We want the most well-trained, the best, the nicest, the happiest, the most caring staff we can. And we want to foster the strongest sense of community that we can. So like I said, I think, shop around, go to gyms, ask questions, show up in person, and see what kind of vibe you get, see what kind of answers they can give you to your questions. Hopefully you have a great experience, and hopefully that can kind of filter the bad gyms from the good gyms, and it can, help you find a place that kind of, feels like home for fitness. And as far as, like, most experienced people, like, if you're an athlete looking, honestly, I think any athlete, you don't have to be in the sport of CrossFit. You can be in the sport of anything. I think it's just, understanding that in order to optimize your performance, you have to optimize every single piece of your day. And that is a full-time job. So, I think a lot of people, if you want to be the best in any sport, you need to be willing to treat every hour of your day as such. Like, you need to be worried about your hydration the first thing you wake up in the morning. You need to be worried about what time you're going to bed. You need to be worried about eating all the right things at all the right times. Are you stretching enough? Are you ice bathing? Are you seeing, physical therapists, chiropractors, massage therapists? Like, there are so many things that go into performing at your best and kind of helping It's like for me, like it's thinking about like, all right, training is this bubble right here. It's the parentheses in the math equation. And if I can put a little exponent next to it based on the things that I'm doing outside of the gym, like that's how I can best amplify what I'm doing in the gym. Because what you're doing in the gym is only so much. So like, in my opinion, like if your training's in the parentheses, you get a factor of 1 if you just train every day and you treat the rest of your day like shit. And every time you eat the right thing, you do the right thing, stretch, you get to bed on time, you get a good night's sleep, you're just growing that exponent. You're going to the 3rd, to the 4th, the 5th. And it's like, that's how you have to view your day. And you're just trying to stack that up every single day as much as you can. And it is exhausting sometimes. And it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of kind of foresight, takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot, but there's a reason that being the best is hard, because that's
Right.
That's what it takes, frankly. And I think you don't get any days off from that. And I think that's something that people they don't miss that, but maybe underappreciate just how much of a factor that plays in kind of performing at your best and becoming one of the best.
For sure. I just read the book Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read it or not.
Awesome. Such a good book.
And what you're saying just reminds me of, and I'm so bad at this because I read things, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then I can't like spit the facts back out. But basically, in one part of the book, he was talking about how, like, if you just make everything in your life 1% better at a time, over time, like everything affects each other within your day. So like you're saying, like, yeah, if you train as hard as you can every day, but everything else is garbage, you're not going to be the best. But it's like, how can you improve the other things in your life by even just 1% a day or whatever it is? Because those things over time add up to big changes. And he uses examples of different sports teams that have done whatever it is that they do that makes them a little bit better in areas that might not seem totally relevant to the sport. But then when it adds up, it all connects. It's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's like, if anyone listening hasn't read that book and you want to be a high achiever, you should stop what you're doing right now and go buy that book, because it is like, it's a great, it's an awesome, it gets really in depth in a lot of areas, but it's also like, it's habit building 101, like it's an intro level course to how to optimize your life and how to create good habits. And like, they can be good habits around anything, like I'm a big believer, like, discipline is great. Everybody like loves, like, you got to be a hard line, whatever, but like discipline becomes really easy if you create good habits. And like, I think that's like for me, that's a really important piece. It's like, it's like, it can be a simple example, like, it's like, well, how do you not get off your diet? It's like, I don't buy shit. Like, I don't put crap in my house. Like at the end of the day, like and if I do, I hide it behind 17 healthy things so that I can't touch it. It's like, again, it's as simple as like, I'm not going to rely on my discipline and my willpower on a regular basis. I'm going to make it really hard to do the bad thing and really easy to do the good thing. And, like, that's like what Atomic Habits talks a lot about, is like, optimizing your day by making the good habits easy and the bad habits hard, and like, again, it sounds so simple, but like, it takes a lot of conscious thought, effort, and structure to make that your reality, like kind of in your life and in your house. So
yeah, definitely. I heard of the book. What's that?
Can't speak highly enough of that book.
Yeah, no, it's like, I was actually just on the phone with my sister this morning. We were talking about it and we were both like, we should just read it again, because we both read it. And now we're like, but I wish we could remember like everything from it. So we want to reread it. But and he's also on I heard of him and his book. He was on a podcast. I think it was Be Well by Kelly that he was on. And it was really good, like listening to him. And I was like, oh shit, I need this book. Like, this is awesome. And it's crazy because it, like you're saying, like, it all sounds easy and it sounds pretty straightforward, but also it's not. But so like the way he puts it just makes it like, I don't know. It's just, it was really eye-opening, I guess, and just made me think about the way that I structure my day and in a completely new way.
Oh yeah, no, it will definitely, it'll blow your mind as far as like how much you're leaving on the table with your day and like in your routines and your habits and all these things. Actually, funny story. So that the author's name is Mike
James Clear.
James Clear. Sorry,
but Clear. Mike's super close to James. It's like the same name.
Yeah, it's like basically next door.
Basically.
So like, anyway, so it was really funny because man, it was that book came out maybe what, 2 years ago?
Oh, I have no idea.
So it was, but so it's really funny. I got a random DM. It had to have been in 2017 or 2018 from some random guy. He's like, "Hey, I wrote a book. It's all about like, habits and optimizing your life and your training." He's like, "I'd love to send you a copy." And I was like, "All right, great. Here's my address." And like, book showed up. I put it on my table, and I didn't read it. Like, like it just kind of like gathered dust, and like I didn't think anything of it. Like, and literally like 2 years roll by. And one of my buddies is like, "Yo, have you heard about this book? Like Atomic Habits. It's amazing." And funny enough, I'm like, "I think I have that book." And I like go back and like, I, brush the dust off, and I'm like, "Holy shit. Like, yeah, this is it." And like, it was just really funny. The author, James, he reached out to me and like through like CrossFit or whatever. I don't know how he found my Instagram page, but he's like, "Yeah, like I think you would really like this." And lo and behold, I like went back through my DMs like 3 years later, like when I read the book for the first time in like, I don't know, whatever, maybe 2019 or late 2018, early 2019. And I was like, I sent a message. I was like, "Hey man, book, it was amazing. It was life-changing, like awesome work." Like, whatever. It was just really funny that like like he said, he reached out and sent me the book, long before I had even, like now I feel like it's kind of like, I mean, it's almost a mainstream like success,
Yeah.
like it's something that, I mean, any high achiever has read, frankly, if I'm being honest.
Right. No, for sure. Well, I feel like that's very telling of like the kind of person you are. If like he reached out to you, like you're saying, it's a mainstream book now. Like everybody that I've brought it up to is like, "Oh yeah," and like has read it or wants to read it or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
That's really funny. It was just like sitting on your table for 2 years and
Crazy little
you didn't
thing.
know that you had like gold on your table.
And, yeah, I'm like, "Man, what if I had read this book in 2017 when he sent it to me, you moron." Like, anyways, yeah, I like kind of kicked myself about it. I was like, "You've had this book on your nightstand forever now, and you
Right.
finally read it." And it's like, "Oh yeah, it is amazing and kind of life changing."
Right. That's awesome. All right. Well, those are all of my questions. So unless there's anything else that you want to say, I'm going to wrap this up.
No, that was a lot of fun, and that was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Thank you so much for being here today. I think that our community and our listeners are going to really, really enjoy this. So I really appreciate your time. I know that you're busy with all your businesses and your family and everything. So the fact that you took time out of today to talk and share your story and your point of view on everything is really meaningful. So thank you.
awesome. No, thanks for having me. Like I said, it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So I think it was really good. It was a great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening in, and we'll talk to you next time.